It's time to bring you yet another amazing episode. And now, welcome your host.
Good to have you on the show. This is Live by Omobola Stephen, a podcast that focuses on personal development and self-improvement, along with professionals and experts who are adept in the topic of personal development and self-improvement, sharing disruptive yet constructive mindship conversations that is going to pivot the positive changes you and I need in the side of eternity. The mission and the focus of Live by Omobola Stephen is for us to be able to really emphasize the need to embrace personal development and self-improvement. Now, it's a lifelong process that you and I must embrace, really do. But I tell you, when we come to intentionally embrace and focus on personally developing ourselves and improving ourselves along the way, we tend to find ourselves, and in finding ourselves, we realize that there's so much innate potentials and possibilities that life has in store for us if we don't give up. Now, the changes that you and I are craving for can only happen when we are intentional about changing our lives also. Now, it's very important for us to begin to have a shift in this regard. Today, I have Scott Maderer, who guides Christians to master the time, talent, and treasures so they can live out their calling. Now, Scott also is a certified human behavior consultant and the podcast host of Inspired Stewardship. Thank you for joining me on the show, Scott Maderer.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you once again and looking forward to this great topic as we explore on just about how we can live out our calling in terms of fulfilling the three core values of time, talent, and our treasures.
Mm-hmm. So oftentimes, people come to me and they're like, I know there's something I'm supposed to be doing. I know I'm supposed to be doing more of this, but usually they feel like they'll say, I don't have enough time to do it, or I don't have enough money to do it, or they'll feel kind of trapped that they have a job maybe that's good income, but they also have debt and other things that are kind of holding them back. And they don't seem to be able to use their money or use their time in alignment with what they really feel passionate about doing and feel called to do. And so a lot of times it comes up, the symptom is time and money. Real truth is, at the end of the day, all we ever work on is talent, because at the end of the day, it's not really about how much time or how much money you have. It's about you, because it's about how you manage the time and money, how you use the time and money, which is really about not managing time or money. It's about managing yourself and the way you use those resources.
All right. Now, I still want to go back to your expertise in terms of you working with others in the area of mastery their time, their talents, and their treasures. And now, so that they can live out their calling. Now, I have 21 questions for you. By calling now, what are you referring to? And also, what do you think these three values of time, talent, and treasures has a lot to do with a person's calling?
So calling is really that deeper thing than just your career. I think a lot of times we kind of confuse those two things. We think what we do and we get paid to do, well, that has to be the thing that we're called to do. And it may overlap, but it's not going to be the exact same thing. I think of our career or the roles that we take on as kind of our assignment. And in fact, the word career comes from a Greek word for cart, which means to get from point A to point B. It's something that you use to travel to a destination, where the word, what we now call would be calling, the real word for that is vocation. And notice the word vocation, it's like vocalization or vocal. It means to be called. It's something that comes from outside of us. I'm a person of faith, so I believe it comes from God. But again, whether you believe in God or not, it's the kind of drive that comes from outside of us that moves us forward towards something deeper, something more authentic, something more connected. And that will show up in the roles that we do as well, but they're not the same thing. One is the emotion, the other is the actual action. And so what we do is step back and begin to explore what is that deeper drive that you have and how is it showing up in your life in all of your different roles. And oftentimes what holds people back from being able to do more of those things is that time and that money area, or at least that's what they feel like is holding them back. That's sort of the symptom, but the actual cause like you talked about at the beginning, is that self-development piece, is that inward piece where we look at ourselves and really understand what we're doing, what we're not doing, the decisions we're making, why are we making those decisions. That's actually a lot harder than just, quote, download an app so that you can do something with your time or your money. But that's what people think will fix it. It's really not. It's the deeper work on the talent side that actually fixes the problem.
But really, Scott, now I'm thinking in my head, why can't I build a career for my calling?
Oh, you can. It's not that you can't. It's just that they're not exactly the same thing. So your calling will show up in more than just your career. It's not that that's the only thing that you can do where your calling will show up. Your calling will show up in how you are as a parent, how you are as a son or a daughter, how you are as the coworker or a friend or spouse, all of those different roles that you have, paid and unpaid, things you do to get money, things that you do just because you're you, those, your calling will show up in some ways in all of those, because your calling is that deeper drive behind what you do. So like in my case, over time, I have done things in my career so that more and more of my calling shows up in the thing that I do and get paid for, my career. But at the same time, even back in the beginning, my calling was showing up in things that I was doing. I just wasn't able to live it as fully or as authentically as I do now, because I've very deliberately made choices over the years so that I can do more and more of those things that really feed my soul and give me energy, while also doing things that get paid. So it's not that they don't overlap or can't overlap. It's just, I don't think we always want to look at it as the same thing. That's the mistake that people make. They think the only place that their calling shows up is in their career. And your calling actually shows up through all of your life if you can authentically and intentionally design your life that way. But that takes work, that takes effort, that takes thinking, that takes planning. And then of course that takes execution and habits and systems and all of the other things that we have to do so that we can actually find a way to have that calling show up, not just in our career, but in other places as well.
Now, between calling and also career, really unpaid and paid for, how can we put this in proper perspective?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily a proper perspective, because proper implies that there's always a right answer, which a lot of times when people hear that, they then say, well, what I want must be the right answer for everybody. And the truth is there's different choices. So I've had folks that actually go over here and they do something that they get paid for and they enjoy it, but it's not really deeply passionate for them. It's not really their calling, but then they use that money to fund a lot of time and energy over here to do things that really are their calling. Now, that's not the choice I've made, but that doesn't mean it's not the proper choice, because it may be the choice they make that works for them and their life and their intentions. That's, again, gets back to that idea of it's less about just doing it and it's more about being intentional about how you live it out, that lets us actually do things in a way that work for us. And of course, if you're married or in a partnership, in a relationship, now it becomes even more complicated, because you've got your passions and your calling, you've got your spouse's passions and their calling, and then you actually end up with the calling that's kind of the unified calling of y'all as a couple. So there's three different things kind of going on, and that becomes even more complicated to have communication and talk about those and begin to align those and figure out, what is it that we need to do to be able to design the life that we want to live intentionally, that we feel called to live. And that, again, that's where the work comes in, because if you just kind of do it, if you just wing it, it's never going to happen. It has to be done intentionally.
Okay, thanks for sharing your thoughts. I'd like us to just move a bit from that. In terms of enhancing organizations' productive power, how do you think time and talent can improve efficiency?
For an organization, again, most studies show that in a business, folks actually only work somewhere around 60% of the time that you're paying them to work. So when when their employees there, they're actually doing productive work about 60% of the time is what most studies show, or sometimes even less. It depends on the establishment, but that's like the high end. So what happens then is, again, as you help people develop those habits, those mindsets, and understand themselves better, then they begin to feel more autonomous. They begin to feel more authority. They begin to make better decisions. They're going to be more engaged at work. That's what allows them to move up that ladder. So when you're working with individuals in a company environment or in a workplace environment, I think a lot of times we lose sight of the fact that they're still individuals. We want to treat everything uniform, and there's reasons for that, and in terms of efficiency and scale and all of these things. But there's also a good value in the leaders stepping back and recognizing that as they're putting together that team, as they're putting together that plan, it's made up of individual people. And what do I need to do to kind of put this puzzle together in a way that all of those pieces can thrive and succeed, because then the overall organization is going to do much better as well. You know, I worked in corporate for years. I led a very large team, had a very big budget, flew all over the country, did all of those things. And a lot of times, I think when we step back and look at it, we lose sight of the individuals, and it causes us to, because we're not as leaders helping them clear the barriers and do the things that are really authentic to them, they're frustrated, they're tired, they're doing busy work, right? And there's a big difference between busy and productive. Busy just means doing a bunch of stuff. Productive actually means doing stuff that matters. And most of us spend most of our time being busy, not actually being productive.
All right. So thank you for that once again. But really, I'm just I'm looking at the organization right now. Now, how can we get the teams? I'm talking of the leadership now. How can they get the teams to exactly focus on their talent, right? To do work that is talent related instead of trying to do what the organization suggests. Because I think
a lot of that comes down to actually understanding people. That's, again, what I was talking about with losing sight of the individual. So one of the models that I'm trained in with the personality and communication is DISC, right? And this is an idea of looking at people as kind of divided amongst 4 big categories, but most people are a blend. And the first step is to actually understand yourself. Understand you as a leader. How do you communicate? How do you see the world? What do you understand? Are you a D, which is a high driver, results-oriented kind of person? That's about 10% of the population. Are you an I? These are people that are motivated by fun and energy and engagement and this sort of thing. Are you an S, which is more of a supporter type person who's kind of more interested in the status quo? So the I's are about 20, 25% of the population. The S's are like 30 to 40% of the population. And then the last category, the C, are the cautious type. They're very rules oriented. They're very behavior oriented in terms of steps and process. They're kind of the person you were talking about that's like, they're just going to do it because that's what the process says. So they're going to do it anyway. And again, remember, everyone's a blend. So it's not like you're just one of these most of the time. You're a blend of them. So for example, if a leader is a high D, so they're very results oriented, but then they've got a team where there's a bunch of people on that team that are these S personalities. Well, D's and S's, when they communicate, they speak very differently. So it's like the D, the leader, is up there talking German, and the S's are over here and they only speak French. And they're going, I don't understand what they're telling me. And so they end up not able to perform as well, because it's honestly like you're giving them directions in a foreign language. And so as a leader, it's incumbent on us to understand first our own communication style, our own personality, our own approaches. We have to understand that fully, and then actually begin to learn what it is for our team. And then you can begin to structure the work and the instructions and all of those things in ways that support your team members. And sometimes that may mean, hey, this person, they do this part of the process and that person does that part of the process because it plays to their strengths. Sometimes it's more about how do you engage with them or recognize them or put them in places. Some people like to be recognized in public, other people don't. So it's learning all of those sorts of things and doing that hard work of understanding it is what lets you then step back and begin to design the team and the interactions in a way that's more authentic and lets everybody succeed. And they actually understand what you're asking them to do because you're speaking their language. It's never going to be easy and natural, and it just comes easy to you, but it's something that you can learn. It is a skill that can be developed and trained and understood and learned as a leader.
Now, between money management and time management, they are mates. I wouldn't be conclusive on that, but really, do you think it is true? And what do we need to know in terms of self-management? Is there anything like that?
Money management and time management are actually, from a behavior standpoint, very, very similar. Now, the exact tools you use are different. The techniques you use may be different. It's a budget for money, and we call it something else for time, like planning your day. It's really, though, conceptually, it's the same thing, because what you kind of ask there is, it's really about self-management. It's not actually about managing your money or managing your time. It's about managing yourself. And so the tools may be different, or the habits may be different, but the underlying mindset and behavior is the same. They're both finite resources. You only have so many hours in a day. You only have so much money in your bank account. And by the way, I don't care how much you make, you still only have so much money in your bank account, whether you make $30,000 a year or $3 million a year. It's finite. There's a point where you run out. And the same thing is true of time. And because of that, you actually have to step back and look at yourself, and how are you using it? How are you planning around it? What are you executing? What are you not executing? You actually have to think about what are your values and what's important to you. So when it comes to money, that sometimes is about questions about what are you saving? What are you spending? How are you utilizing your funds? When it comes to time, it's the same thing. How are you using your time to actually do the things that are more authentic to you? And of course, the first step is to actually understand yourself, because if you don't understand, it's kind of if you don't know where the destination is, well, then any route will get you there, because you're not going anywhere. So you have to step back first and think about, hey, me as myself, what is it that I'm called to do? What is actually my intention? What is authentic to me? And then it's about aligning your behavior with those resources of time and money.
Now, Scott, according to John C. Maxwell, if our talent really is never enough, what are we missing out then?
Well, talent's never enough by itself. Talent definitely is something that gives us a direction to go. It gives us skills. It gives us natural ability. But here's the thing: the person that actually develops that talent and trains that talent and understands that talent more fully maybe is not as talented. Somebody over here has a lot of natural talent, but this person doesn't have as much. But if this person is the person that's out there working every single day, they're actually going to outperform the person with more, quote, natural talent that doesn't actually work and understand it. So it's an interesting balance, because you want to work towards your strengths. You want to work towards the things that you're really good at and that you're best at. But at the same time, you have to develop your weaknesses, at least to the extent of functionality, or you have to build systems and processes and people and other things in place that support those weaknesses. It's the old idea of, if you're not good at math, you probably don't want to become an accountant, because that's going to be something that you're using math every day in your main career. You're spending tons of time doing it. But at the same time, you still got to be able to do basic math and balance your checkbook. So there's a little bit of a work towards your strengths, but also understand your weaknesses and shore those up in ways, either by bringing in other people or supporting yourself in other ways. So a lot of it comes back to understanding yourself and your talent, but then actually developing those things so that you get better over time, because a talent undeveloped is never as good as the person that actually works towards developing it.
Thank you so much, Scott, for sharing your insight on the show. Now, as people complete the process of assembling the puzzle of their call, what do you think is the most important thing for them to remember? Now, I emphasize the puzzle of their call. Can you shed more light on this?
Sure. So the subtitle of my book, which is called Inspired Living, is actually assembling the puzzle of your call by mastering your time, your talent, and your treasures. And the reason why I call it a puzzle is I think a lot of times we think again of things like calling, we think about our life as a photograph or a destination, a single point. When the reality is we're always on a journey and we're always kind of reinventing ourselves. And, if everything is going great in your life, I can tell you that's not going to last forever. If everything's going terrible in your life, I can tell you that's not going to last forever. What tomorrow is going to be different from today. And so a lot of it comes back to recognizing that this is a journey, this is a dynamic process, this is a process of discovery, not an end point or it's done. You never really finish asking the question, what is this next phase of my life going to look like? What do I want to be when I grow up, is the way I kind of jokingly say it. I don't care if you're 8 or 84, you still want to be asking yourself, what's this next phase going to look like for me? What am I going towards? What am I driven towards? What is it going to be? And I think it's important to recognize that your answer, at 40 may be different than your answer at 14. And that's not a bad thing, because a lot of times people beat themselves up for that. They're like, why didn't I understand what I wanted to be when I was 20? Well, because you didn't have the same experiences that you have now. So your answer was naturally going to be different. And so a lot of it is recognizing that allows you to step back, and instead of seeing things always as, this is a failure, or I didn't succeed, or I didn't do that, I try to frame things as experiments, and we're just getting data. We're just learning things. And if you focus on the learning and the experience and the journey, then all of a sudden, when things go wrong, it's not because it's the end of the world and you failed. It's just, oh, I learned something that doesn't work, or I've learned something that I don't want to do, or I've learned something that isn't good for me. Okay, great. Now I know not to do that again, and it becomes good information as opposed to internalizing it. And it becomes all about how you failed, or I'm a failure, and this sort of language. So often the way we talk to ourselves and the things we say to ourselves are things we would never say to another human being, especially someone we cared about. And yet it's the language that we have in our head. And so a lot of it is understanding that and reframing that, beginning to look at things in a different way. And when you change your beliefs, you change your language, you also change your actions.
Right. And Scott, do you have any important information, perhaps any exciting projects you think the audience is going to benefit from? If you have any, come on, it's time for you to share.
Absolutely. So I actually put together a resource page just for your listeners. So if you go over to my website, which is inspiredstewardship.com, and then just /lived, you'll find a resource page there. Has information that you can download for free to get some resources on these areas of time, talent, and money, understanding your calling, understanding how you're doing these things. It's got information about my book, Inspired Living. It's got information about my podcast. All of that's there, as well as a place that you could jump on a quick call with me. And I'd be happy to talk to any of your listeners that have more questions about this. And again, you can find all of that over at inspiredstewardship.com /lived.
Absolutely. Thank you once again, Scott. All right. You've shared your social media handles on your website. Or is
Absolutely.
there any other information that we need to know?
Everything is over there on the website. That's always the easiest way to get a hold of me. Everything kind of channels through there. All my social media links are there and all of that.
All right. Quickly, can you share a parting word to the audience, if you have any?
Can I share what? I'm sorry.
Can you share a passing word to the audience, if there's any?
Sure. The most important thing, I always look at this is if you step back and you recognize that your life is that journey, like we were just talking about, it's not a destination. Your life is a film strip, not a photograph, is one of the ways I say it. And if you put your energy forward instead of backwards, you'll always make more choices. You'll make different choices. You'll begin to frame your life in a different way. And that's honestly what makes us move towards living our authentic calling.
All right. Good to know. Thanks for that inspiration, Scott. I had Scott Maderer, who helps the people. He guides Christians to master their time, talent, their treasure, so they can live out their calling. He's also a podcast host, just as I am, and a certified human behavior consultant. Thank you so much, Scott Maderer, for sharing your thoughts on today's topic and also your valuable time to the audience of the podcast Live by Omobola Stephen. Sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of the audience, we wish you best of luck in your book projects and subsequent projects that you embark upon.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed being here.
Absolutely. Thank you once again, Scott. If you'd like to catch up with any missed episodes of the podcast, Live or Lift by Omobola Stephen, we share disruptive yet constructive mindship conversations on topics and subjects that are related to personal development and self-improvement. Come on, you can listen to them on any cross-promotion platforms you bump into or any podcast distribution platforms you bump into online, and do have a great time. I need you always to stay safe. My name is Omobola Stephen once again. Thank you once again for joining me on the show. And thank you once again, Scott. We had a great time indeed.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you subscribe and leave us a review.